Psychoanalysis, children find fathers. Namaste. Fathers come after mothers. Children find fathers after they have found mothers. Conversation today is the role of the father in early psychic life of the child and how these experiences play out in life and in adult pathology. Subject guide is with us, Dr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
It's a very fascinating topic. Usually, the world of children is more around mothers. It is totally centered towards motherhood. How early does father enter the psychic world of the child?
There are two answers to this. If we take the word father to literally mean the father,
Mm.
we'll get one answer, the classical answer. And if we uh, mean by the word father a metaphorical meaning of it, like the paternal, then we get a different answer of it.
Hmm.
Like when we say the fatherliness of the father is actually the paternal. So if we talk instead of the mother and the father in
Hmm.
terms of the maternal and paternal, we get a different answer. So let us look at both these situations.
Hmm.
We mean by father literally the father, then the father enters the scene obviously after the mother. When does he enter? If we take the Freudian conceptualization, then the father becomes important in the Oedipal stage, which is 4 to 5 years of age, usually 4. If we take Melanie Klein's ideas on Oedipus, then Melanie Klein prepones the Oedipus to 2.5 years. So then the father makes a substantial entry at 2.5 years. If we take Freud's other idea of the anal training, then the anal training is something where the limitations of reality are put upon the child.
Hmm.
So in that sense, the father makes an entry at the beginning of the anal stage. So if the anal training is taken to be a paternal training, then the father or the father in the mother,
Hmm.
that makes it. So let's not go get into father in the mother, but let me say the father also makes an entry because both the mother and the father are toilet training the child. So even before the Oedipus within Freud, in the anal period, which is from 2 to 3.5, the
Hmm.
father definitely makes an entry. But that entry is like a proto entry in the Freudian sense of things. The real entry substantially is in the Oedipus.
So, is it right to say that if we use the Freudian lens, father arrives after this stage? But if we use a Freudian lens for understanding paternal um connection, when is that?
Right. So if we look into the second meaning of the word father, meaning we don't use a literal meaning, we use a metaphorical meaning. So if the metaphorical meaning of father is taken to be the paternal, then the first paternal that the child experiences is when the mother tries to wean away the child from breastfeeding.
Hmm.
Because that is the first time that the limitations of the reality are put upon the child. And desire does not have a free road to move upon. So if we take 1.5 years as the average age of feeding, or 2 years as the average age of feeding, then
Ideal.
yeah, then in fact, working women have no choice. They wean off much earlier. So let us say if we take the weaning away to happen, let us say at 1 year today, given the working women, then that would be the entry of the paternal, the entry of the metaphorical father. And then the metaphorical father even within the mother, will make an entry along with the literal father in the anal stage.
Hmm.
And in the Oedipal stage, not only the father will impose a limitation, but even the mother by her actions will impose a limitation on the child. And therefore, the paternal in the mother also will be active in the Oedipal stage. So this is the first time that in different ways you can conceptualize the entry of the father or the paternal in the psychic world of the child. It's very important because one way to look at it is to look at it in terms of eros and logos.
Hmm.
So mother in a way represents the giving, the nurturing, the the all agreeing, the all providing, uh, boundless nourishment, whereas father brings in the element of reason and reality, of limitations, also of power relationships, and also of taboo and also of morality. So if
Also, that of punishment and withholding.
and also that of punishment and withholding. So father brings with him the element of logos. So Jung uses this couplet of words, eros and logos. The mother represents the eros and father represents the logos.
Logos.
By father, you can easily say the maternal and the paternal. So the maternal is eros and the paternal is logos. And in fact, in a minority way, both are present in both the parents.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is how we
Especially through the Jungian understanding, of course, both are there.
correct. And then there is, in the Lacanian sense, the entry of the big father, meaning the big other.
Yes.
So the big other is the law, the customs of the community, the language, the traditions, the historical remnants, effective history, the spirituality of the place where you are being brought up. All of this is comes as a given non-negotiable upon the child. And this creates a kind of the big father who also comes into the psychic realm of the child. So this is
In fact, what you're saying, it is so relevant. Today, I had a workshop with parents of toddlers, 3.5 years, exactly what when the father concept is being introduced. And the theme was to do with the digital world. And that is where even I introduced this as a Lacanian framework was going on in my mind. And I used this word, the third parent. So earlier, the third parent was the village which was raising the child, the social understanding. Now it is the screen being the third parent or the big father.
correct. So the families have got nuclearized. We have a nuclear family situation, and they are cut off from the village. But the village is now on the screen.
Screen.
So we have substituted the real village with a virtual village.
So
But
I had used the same word. What a coincidence! It's the third parent. The probably more like a triangulation. There are two biological parents, and third one is uh, giving a lot of reverie and blissful time to children. So they're more indulging into the third parent, the screen.
correct. And in a way, not only the um, Eros is on the screen, but even the big other is on the screen. It's literal.
That's what. Yes, less. Literally, it is like that.
So these are some of the ways in which we can understand the entry of the father in the field of the child.
Mm.
And as we said, uh, literally we can put it at 1.5 years of age, or sorry,
Freudian. So.
literally we can put it at 2 years of age, and metaphorically we can put it at 1.5 years.
Hmm. Why is father important to the child? If we see in many of the other species, the after reproductive system, fathers are erased by many of the species. Of course, in the lower reptiles and all, but in human setup, why is father important to the child in understanding of the psychic development?
Our hardware is very different as a species. from hardware of those species where the father is eliminated. In our hardware, the father is extremely important. And there is no comparison between two situations where a child grows up with a father and a child that grows up without a father. There is no comparison because the hardware is very different. The father is important to the child in a variety of ways. The first is in negotiating a triangular relationship, because the first thing that the father does is to convert a linear relationship with the mother into a triangle, where the two others in the triangle have a relationship over which you have no control. And that is what we find in society. So the triangle, in a way, is a miniature sample of the society to come. And how well you negotiate the triangle is, in a way, an indicator of how you will negotiate the society. So it's very important to learn negotiating a triangle because that's a microcosm of the society. Second is to internalize the logos, internalize the limitations of reality, which enables sanity,
Hmm.
and to be prepared for legitimate castration by reality. The third is to internalize ideals, the superego strengthening. The fourth is to internalize the element of power. The fifth is to internalize being enterprising. The sixth, being resourceful. And seven, to judiciously find a place in the world. A place which is not flying on the wings of fantasy, and a place which is not in the valley of defeatism. A justful place, a hopeful place. All of this requires the father, and it requires a good father, because we must remember two things are very important early in that stage of life. Two things are constantly happening, which then lay the foundation of adult personality. One, early life experience of the world,
Hmm.
and second, continuous internalization which is happening almost automatically, regardless of any filter. Whatever is present and seen gets internalized. And these two things, they lead to the core beliefs and templates that form our personality later on. So it's very important in that stage to have a father and to have a good father. Both are important, because if we don't internalize a good experience with the father, or we don't internalize a good enough father, a good enough in 10 different ways, if that does not happen, then the fundamental beliefs and the templates on which the personality is created, that gets into problem. And the problem then comes up in adult life and also in pathology. It's not that if you don't come in DSM criteria, you don't have problems. It's just that you have normal problems, so to say.
On listening to what you're sharing right now, I just feel like reaching out to people. May the viewers share this video most, so that there's always our society thinks children are to do with mother and father is just there as a provider. But what you're sharing right now, so that knowledge needs to reach out, because to have a complete healthy psyche, this is such an essential component.
And it's also important for fathers to see this thing, to know how good or not good fathers they are. Because um, it
And
is,
that would take them to their own castration anxiety.
and there'll be a lot of guilt. Like last discussion we had was children find mothers, and
Mothers.
mothers see that video, many of them will have guilt. that they have not done something right. Similarly, many will have the guilt after seeing this discussion that perhaps certain things they have done is not right.
Today,
And
as I shared, when I was visiting school, it was supposed to be a parental thing, and only mothers were there. None of the fathers turned up. That kind of system, social system we have, where father is not only deleted uh, from the mind and responsibilities, a big erasing is happening. I don't know, something is way too wrong with our society currently.
and no wonder that people are looking for father figures outside of the family. That one of the characteristics of our hardware is that not only we seek father figures, but if the father is not an adequate father, we look out for an adequate father outside. That also is a characteristic of our species, and we can see so many people looking out for father figures, and often they find it in spiritual masters, the ideal father figure. And this is something very peculiar to our species and very pervasive in our species.
And is there a possibility there that, if there is a term, I don't know, leading to tertiary narcissism, where the child looks out for the good enough father, no father found in the immediate surrounding, grows up, internalize one's own version of course, it's quite a distorted version. And from there, the secondary narcissism, which was not full blown, was there, the traits were there. It takes you to the tertiary form of narcissism.
Correct. So it's the if the mechanism is there of identification with the internalized images, that the if the father has not been good enough and somehow you're entangled with the father. Another way of saying it is you have a father wound. So if you are entangled in the father wound in some way, then there are three ways in which you respond. One, you are in defiance of anybody like your father. Two, you are in search of a good version of your father. And three, you are in search of an idealized version of the father, which may be miles apart from your father. And in all the situations, the reference is still to the father. You are still entangled with the father. Even if you are in defiance and you seek out a father figure exactly opposite of him, you are still entangled with him. You are not free of the reference that you have internalized. And in that situation, one of the possibilities is, as you said, that one creates an ideal image of an ideal father inside and identifies with that ideal image. And that can inflate the omnipotence in the person.
That has to do with the psyche world of the child. Otherwise, generally, why is father important?
Uh, One we said is it's a species necessity, as we said. Now, coming to the practical part of it, if good enough experiences with the father are not there, now this is like Winnicott's counterpart. Winnicott talks about good enough mothering, and we are talking about good enough fathering. So, if the good enough fathering is not there, then in adult life we find difficulties in relating to authority figures, in sexual and relationship area, in being entrepreneurial, in being in holding a leadership position, in owning up one's masculinity, in owning up one's power, in showing courage, in not having catastrophic thinking, in being ready to take responsibility of a family, in not running away from responsibility, in being present and available at some place for a long time, in having given up and mourned very deeply the freedom of the college life, in not having pathology related to the not good enough fathering. For example, we'll go into details of it later, but let's say problems of erectile dysfunction, problems of catastrophic thinking, problems of I am not good enough, problems of not having a healthy narcissism. Many of these are related to not having a good enough father, including perversion.
Mm.
Also, is super ego pathology. So, in adult normal life, in organizational life, in relationship life, as well as in pathology, there are implications and a huge cost the person pays across his life if he has not had good enough fathering. The cost is not low. The cost, of course, is not as high as in case of not having a good enough mother, but the cost is not negligible. It's a huge cost one pays for not having had a good enough father in early days. And we can see the search of it in society. It's very pervasive. If you just look,
Way too pervasive as compared to that of a mother.
so you can,
Mothers is quite subtle, but this is way out loud there.
and you can see the ways in which people seek out good father figures in political leaders, in religious leaders, in spiritual leaders, often in teachers. So,
Therapists.
so the father wound in the society is not hidden; it's out there in the open. And like the mother wound, it's not a wound that will heal by itself, and the cost of it is substantial.
What colors and flavors fathers appear before the children? We see a society mixed with the fathers who were not having good enough fathers. It's just a generational trauma.
Correct. So, like in case of mothers, fathers also come in all colors and flavors, and we have the entire range from a good father to a completely absent father, and everything in between. So, like
In
in
fact, here we have extremely aggressive, abusive, violent fathers, addicted fathers. There are a lot of distortions there.
correct, correct. Because given the gender, they have more liberty to go down the wrong road than the women in the given Indian society. And
Any society these days.
and some of them obviously take that road. So what we have is uh, we can start with a good enough father. So on one extreme is the good enough father, a good father. Then you have a good enough father. Then you have uh, a completely absent father, and that creates a very different kind of a dynamic. The absent father may be because of separation, maybe because of job, or maybe because of not liking to be at home.
Right.
So you can have an absent father, physically absent,
Right.
or uh, you can have an emotionally absent father.
Right.
So you have a physically absent father and an emotionally absent father. Then you have a cold father who is cold, who is demanding, who will never get pleased. Then you have a depressed father.
Right.
Then you have a attacking father. Then you have an inadequate father. Then you have a non-resourceful father. Then you have a non-masculine father. Then you have a fearful father. Then you have a defeated father. Then you have a, a fused father. And then you have a father with some personality disorder and also is fused. And then you have a completely pathological, perverted, or sociopathic or attacking father,
Mm.
extremely pathological father. So this is a complete range, and based upon what the child has experienced as a father, and what preceded that experience and what followed that experience. That also is very important along with the constitution of the child. And we are not saying the experience with the father alone is enough to create a pathology. It is not the only determining factor, but definitely one of the very important determining factors. Because most of the pathologies are over-determined, multi-determined, multifactorial. But this father factor is a very important factor.
What about while the whole spectrum of fathers is there, but still that version is also idealized because it is validated by the society. Does that create a much more bigger conflict inside the psyche? Does is psyche able to understand when we talk about the pathology of superego? If there is this aggressive, disconnected, detached father, he exists, but that is the only way society says yes. Fathers are like that. Idealize this version of him. So, does the psyche detects that conflict of what the child really needs for the development, what society offers and validates? In one part, it is like, okay, father is dead. Father has left the mother. Father was never there. Parents got divorced. Not so good. But here there is a big conflict and it is being validated by most of us. Does the psyche identifies or it pays a heavy cost to it?
It's a very good question. It pays a very heavy cost because there is something absolute about human nature.
Mm,
Like, it is not that we come out as a blank sheet, the tabul rasa theory, and we get our standards completely from society. If that was true, we would not have any conflict.
mm,
Then our standards and social standards are the same. The conflict comes when our standards are not social standards. And there is something absolute, something inborn, something innate about us.
mm.
Regardless of what society presents to us as an ideal father, we know what the ideal is, and we know the social society's ideal is not really the ideal. And
That's why sometimes I say in the therapy space, in the psyche, I never say it's a father wound. I say it's a guarded father. You're guarding your father.
so the ideal that we have continues.
Hmm.
For example, in many communities, you will have it very normalized in society that the father will be very rough and brash, very dominating and almost violent,
Right.
and completely emotionally unexpressive and miles away from delicacy or vulnerability.
Hmm.
Regardless of what society puts into every one of us, the search for the ideal father in an absolute sense continues. And what we see is that there is something absolute about it, inborn, innate, that we want a courageous, soft, firm, emotional, at the same time, enterprising and strong father, including a strong superego. So, our ideal of the good father is more depicted in our mythology,
Hmm.
in the current tales or the current beliefs of the society. In the sense, the mythology of the society is far better indicator and closer to our natural ideal than what is presented in the current flow of things.
Probably they figured out that time that we need some source to fulfill for this big gap of reality.
Right. And that equally applies for the mother part.
Mother as well. And I just wondered that is to do with the Sanatan, but when we see uh, Christianity, Muslims, there the father figure is there, mother figures are absent.
Correct.
And again, it cannot just fulfill that gap.
True.
When we looked about the spectrum, can we start off with the extreme, the absent father?
Yeah. What does the absent father lead in adult pathology, lead to in adult pathology. Uh, a child who has experienced an absent father, many problems can come up. Again,
This is the physical absence we are talking about.
physical absence. And again, I will repeat for the entire discussion that we are not saying this is the only factor determining pathology. We are saying this is one of the factors. So, for a child who has had an physically absent father, one of the difficulties is to accept the uh, limitations of reality because he has not actually experienced the triangle so intimately. He has been in the field of eros without adequate castration from the logos.
Does the third vortex remains open for
Uh,
them in the psyche?
what happens is that somebody takes up the paternal role. It's not completely open, but I would say it is not completely closed also.
Substitute, half formed.
It's a half-formed triangle where there's substantial openness, but it is not that the third line does not exist. But the third line is like a half line. It does not
Hmm.
meet the end of the triangle.
Hmm.
So there's substantial open space. So usually it happens that somebody takes up the paternal role, either the mother herself or somebody else in the family or somebody in the neighborhood or somebody in the school, the teacher. Now, if the child is in a situation where those who have taken a paternal role are very weak or not insisting, and the child has his will, then the triangle is almost open.
Hmm.
Now, what happens is that there, the chances of narcissism are very high, Oedipal entanglement are very high, superego problems of perversion are very high, the problems of addiction are very high. The problem of being a good father oneself is also very high because what he has seen is an absent father. It's very natural for him to be absent from his family. It's very
Does that mean when you say this route, because when in the beginning of the session you talked about the what if we see this what you're saying from Freudian lens, somewhere around the anal age, there is a possibility of uh, bisexuality here. If we see in the age 4, it is to do with narcissistic personality disorder here. And addiction route would be again from the anal stage.
uh, right. So there will be uh, the first problem that will come is a superego pathology. That there is too less of it. The probability of it is very high, and that leads to this whole range of uh, weak superego pathologies, which
Hmm.
to addiction, perversion, sociopathy, the entire range of it. It can also lead to narcissistic entitlement. That is second. Third is inability to adjust in reality. And very difficult for that person to be a good present father himself. Because what he has seen is completely different. So one of the problems with him will be adjustment with reality and being a good father himself. So all this will be the absent father. And then some people will have problems with activating their own masculinity. So that will lead to problems in relating to the other gender and a range of sexual problems where the whole masculinity is not activated because it needs a figure in front of you to activate that latent thing inside. So this is also one thing that often they will end up with dominating women because they are not able to actualize their masculinity. Some of them will have erectile dysfunction issues if the mother has been very overbearing. Some of them will have fusion issues because two people not mediated by the third can easily develop a fused relationship. The triangle, in a way, is a very good protection against fusion. And a linear relationship between two people without a third is a slippery slope to fusion. One can easily slip on that. And then there is too much of being with the mother, and that leads to a lot of Oedipal desires and Oedipal guilt. If there is a natural bisexuality, then the feminine part in boy will get flared up even more.
Mm.
And then lastly, there is this problem of being courageous in society. Because if he becomes as fearful as the mother, or if he does not imbibe protection of the father, because the mother is busy bringing you up in a very difficult way. For most single parents, it's a very difficult thing. So a single parent has far more catastrophic anxiety than a couple of parents. So that can also lead to a lot of catastrophic anxiety, a lot of fears, because it's like you're already on the edge and any mistake can take you down the slope. That is true of both single parenting, whether it's man or woman. And therefore, people become extremely cautious, often getting into catastrophic things. So all
It's like you are at the mercy of the big father, and the immunity which the real father brings in is lost because there's been no exposure to the the father.
the safety and the protection of the father.
Yeah, yeah. It takes away the shield.
Correct.
I'm
Because
still stuck with this understanding, sir. Correct me if I'm getting it derailed. You said father is to do with, a part of it is to do with the superego formation. All these years of my understanding, I was having this vague understanding that it is to do with the child, ego is to do with the father, and superego is to ego is to do with the mother, because ego is to do with the reality check, and what that is what father is bringing. Uh, can you just put some light there? How super ego?
yeah, so two ways. One is in Freudian terms, the second is practical. Practically speaking, we internalize the professional templates from the father,
Hmm.
ethical templates also from the father and the mother both, but more from the father.
Right.
Because
Hmm.
ethics has to do with thou shall and thou shall not.
Yes, I got it.
Thou
Got
shall
it.
not is more internalized from the father. Now, the ego has both the mother and the father parts, which is trying to adjust with the reality.
Hmm.
That adjustment, often the ego is giving like the mother, often uh, controlling or logical like the father, often emotional like the mother, and often cognitive like the father. And even in internal compromise formation between the superego and the id, the ego has both the components, the maternal components which accommodates a part of id, and the paternal component which rejects certain parts of id.
Hmm.
Internally and externally, ego has both the maternal and paternal parts to it, but the superego largely has paternal part to it. And
Got
that
it.
has to do with thou shall and thou shall not. That is one. Now, a very good point you had raised, which just was passing by, I think we should catch it. Um, when the father is not there, you are dependent upon the big father.
Hmm.
And this brings us, what is the color and flavor of the big father,
Hmm.
big other? And that differs from country to country based upon its state of development and the specific situation, the locality where you find yourself. So one broad sweep is, if the country is developed and you have a social security system,
Hmm.
a well-developed infrastructure
Right.
handles those who are on the margins, then the big other or the big father is quite resourceful and helpful.
Hmm.
These things are almost absent in developing countries. So then the luck is, if you are in a close net relationships like it is in villages, then maybe the maternal uncle or your uncle or somebody in the village can come in to partly fulfill the role of the father. Like in many communities, the wife's brother is supposed to be the second father,
Hmm.
to take on a lot of responsibilities of the child, especially in Gujarat. where I am, there are central Gujarat where this is very common.
Right.
The maternal uncle, the mama, has to do far more than the father for the child. So there, the big father is somehow resourceful and good. But for most people in the developing world, most communities, it's terrible. The big father is terrible. And in fact, the father is a shield against the big father. And the
True.
big father gets an entry because of the absence of the father. Things are terrible both for the child and the mother.
Right. There's no immunity to it.
Correct. Because there is no justice system, there is no support system, there is no social security system.
And I think that creates a psychological revenge act by the criminals, which try to, disbalance the society later.
So
It's an act of revenge.
one of the roots of absent father or inadequate father or defeated father or narcissistic and fused father or a perverted and a pathological father at the lower end of the economic spectrum will lead to the psychopathic, sociopathic.
Psychopathic social.
So the first part that we were discussing had to do with the absent father. And the absent father often leaves a hole where one is always trying to just fill it up. And it can lead to a very different kind of emptiness than the type of emptiness that you see in the borderline, which is more mother driven.
Mm-hmm.
And the child internalized emptiness early in life. The emptiness of the father is a very different kind of an emptiness.
Usually, what kind of pathology? If like for mother, it is to do with borderline. Is it to do with bipolar?
Uh, it is more to do with uh,
Process.
yeah, it is more to do with psychosis and more to do with personality disorders.
Personality disorder.
The superego pathology part of both of them, because personality disorders are very complex. The superego pathology is a part of it, and the loss pathology is the root of it.
Root of it.
So, of course, the root is the loss pathology, but a very important component in personality disorder and psychosis also is this whole constellation of superego component. So both these things are there, and then you have the catastrophic thinking, which comes from the absence of the protection and security of the father. So the entire range of anxiety disorders which come out of catastrophic thinking, be it GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, or in some forms of extreme panic, some form of in borderline, also,
Phobias.
in bipolar also you see in certain cases of the manic behavior,
Mm-hmm.
paternal is just absent. So you see a range of difficulties coming up in the pathological realm from the absent father as one of the factors. Again, I will say not the only factor, but definitely a good contributing factor.
Quite strong factor.
And outside of pathology, outside of DSM, in an existential sense, the search for the father is a very wide search. In fact, many people find teachers and gurus and they are very deeply attached to them, very respectful of them. And often they remain in your mind for probably the whole of your life. Like one of the good teachers I had, I still have a photograph of him on my desktop.
No.
It has been, I last, he was my teacher in seventh standard. I was,
Oh,
I was 12 at that time, 12 or 13 maybe that time.
amazing. How can we miss the narcissistic father?
The narcissistic father to certain things, like one, he can train you into dependence. So even if you don't have early life trauma related dependence, he can train you into dependence without a core of it. Second is, he can be very hard to please and he will not allow you to be yourself. Third is he can be extremely demanding and extremely giving, leading to a very unregulated bipolar kind of experience.
Hmm.
Fourth is he can be extremely punitive at times without any calibration. The fifth is the control over you is very high. And one of the difficulties is they don't allow children to be themselves. So either they want children to be copies of them, or they want children to be obedient complements to them, the self other, or they want children to be an idealized version of what they would have liked to be themselves.
Hmm.
So in any case, they don't allow you to be yourself. And then what you have is, if the narcissistic father is successful, then it's even more terrible, because a successful narcissist, as I always say, sends 4 people to therapy, 2 from home and 2 from office.
That is the ratio which you're talking about. People who go for therapy, I'm sure they're going to send 30 if everybody is realistic about their problems.
And the second part is, if the narcissist fails, then it's terrible because he gets into depression.
Hmm.
So that also then comes to, for the child and the wife to bear the failed narcissist. So either he gives up and you have to run around to keep him well,
Fulfill, yeah.
or he sends you to therapy. So these are the difficult parts of a narcissist, and uh, most people, very few people actually grow up with a narcissist, learning to live by identifying with him. That happens only if he is very successful.
In a
Otherwise,
healthy way.
in a healthy way. Otherwise, people internalize what they see.
Hmm.
Usually, what they see in the narcissist is a very narcissistic and manipulative person, a very entitled person, and very unempathic person. And that in turn leads problems and at times to pathology if there is a core. If there is a core of narcissism, it's multiplied. If there is a core of dependence, it's multiplied. If there is a um, core of neglect, gets into histrionicity. If there is a core of high sensitivity, gets into bipolar. And one of the difficulties they bring about is, either they push you into a complete conformity with society,
Hmm.
or they want you to keep you to themselves all their life. So this is a narcissistic father, and then complications are added if along with narcissism you have psychopathy, sociopathy, or fusion, which we'll take later. But this combination of narcissism and fusion is a deadly combo.
How is it with the attacking father?
The attacking father will lead to, if you will, can easily lead to generalized anxiety, to panic, to certain forms of addiction, and a range of personality disorders. Now, if you uh, regroup the 10 personality disorders,
Hmm.
like in DSM-4, we had the grouping, the dramatic ones, the paranoid ones, and so on. If you regroup the personality disorders from the father point of view,
Mhm.
you can group the outcomes of a narcissistic father into narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, right? And the sadistic personality disorder,
Hmm.
and the antisocial personality disorder. This is
These are to do with the fathers, or these are to do with the pathologies of attacking fathers to the child?
the pathology of the child coming from
Attacking father.
attacking or narcissistic father.
Okay.
The attacking or I mean, if you divide into narcissistic and attacking, say two parts, then this group of narcissistic personality disorder, dependent personality disorder, uh, antisocial personality disorder, sadistic personality disorder, and to some extent masochistic personality disorder, but not all of it. They will have more influence of the narcissistic father. And if you look at the influence of attacking father, you will have the anxiety driven spectrum led personality disorders like the paranoid personality disorder, the avoidant personality disorder, the masochistic personality disorder, and to some extent borderline personality disorder. They will have more of attacking fathers.
Mm. Mm.
Of course, in borderline, you will also have an absent father. But like if you look at to what a narcissistic father will contribute and to what an attacking father will contribute, the attacking father will more contribute to more anxiety led issues because the child will always feel as an adult the attack is now about to come. And
The anticipatory anxiety.
correct, and it's so internalized that even when physically the parent is not there, you feel they are somehow around and they will attack you. For example, if the father does not want you to buy a costly bag, and you know if you buy, he will attack you. Now you get married 10 years down the line, you have all the money in the world, and you buy a costly bag, and you're sitting with it alone, and suddenly you have anxiety. As though the father is now going to attack. So he's not there physically, but psychologically he's still there. So to be free from the internalized things is even more difficult than to be free from somebody in the physical presence.
I've seen clients who have had this kind of history. Uh, Anything which brings joy to them, they refuse to internalize the situation, the person, and they prefer to remain in that isolated attacking mode of their anxiety
So,
because that is a known way of internalizing the father.
so this is what I call the exhilaration anxiety. That whenever there is a euphoric feeling, an exhilaration feeling, some people are not comfortable with it.
That is where the flip of bipolarity strikes very hard, very hard. The mania comes in, and then there is immediate attack of the joy or the exhilaration, and
For example, let us say you switch on, you put the volume of your tape recorder or slightly higher side, and the father shouts to make it lower again. Now, very few people will be comfortable in expressing aloud or higher euphoric states. So the moment they have higher euphoric states, they have fragmentation anxiety. And the moment you have expression aloud, they have the anxiety of attack from the society and the fear of shame. And both these things make them live a very constricted, a very rigid and contained life. The range of life is very low, the range of experiences. So when a child wants to have a higher range of experiences, they attack it.
sometimes like an isolation of the effect being generated of the healthy parts.
So this exhilaration containment is a very difficult thing. And this is also one of the places where the fathers and the mothers are internalized. And as an adult, even if you like high volume, the moment you raise the volume, a voice comes from inside and you again reduce the volume. So this is the whole game of the internalized figures.
And there has been a generation around, which I said in the beginning, since they have internalized, they have idealized also this version of father. And they want to give away as a, as a legacy, just because this is how amazing fathers do. It's a legacy of passing on the trauma.
So one of the points of analysis is to be free of these internalized representations and to reflect upon the legitimacy and the substantiveness of the ideals. That the ideals that we believe as ideals, are they really ideals? A contemplation of that is very necessary to refine our superego.
Continuing with the spectrum, it brings us to courageous and cowardly fathers.
It's a very important point, especially in uh, countries.
And I feel very anxious around it because our society is full of this version of fathers.
Correct,
More of it.
correct, correct. And
The cowardly I'm talking about.
this is very common in colonialized countries because there are two aspects to it. One, if they were not cowards and if they were not irrational, they would not have been enslaved. That is one part of it. That there was something pre-colonial rotten in those societies.
Mm.
They always say that a society is captured by another society for many reasons. And one of the reasons is, which is nobody wants to talk about, is that there comes a pandemic of personality disorders.
Very interesting.
This pandemic of personality disorders is what corrodes the society from inside. It takes all the wrong decisions and then it invites capture, invites slavery. And there is something natural about the way cycles operate, that when an empire becomes very powerful and stable, after some time it has to decline, and it can decline in variety of ways. You can have a natural disaster, you can have a medical epidemic, you can have a scientific invention somewhere. But one of the reasons can be an epidemic of personality disorders. And by that, I don't necessarily limit myself to the 10 disorders in DSM. We may have to define 5 or 10 more. But essentially, a range of personality disorders which spreads like an epidemic in society. And best example is USA today.
Yes.
This whole woke epidemic, right? This whole woke epidemic is undoing the West, especially the United States. So this is very pervasive. Now in India, you have fathers who are not courageous and who are cowards, and that is true. That you have a majority, and no reason, no wonder that we were colonialized. And pre-colonial also we had this. In the colonial part, it got fortified. Now there is an economic angle to this also.
Hmm.
The lower down in the economic strata you are, the more is the catastrophic thinking, driven squarely by your economic status and social status in society. And if you are more catastrophic in thinking, the more you are aware, more vigilant, and more prepared, more are the chances of survival, and less are the chances of getting embroiled into anything destructive. The same is true even in the jungle. In economic terms, anybody with more catastrophic thinking will be rehearsing the attack of the predator more, will be rehearsing the attack of the weather even more, and therefore will do something better than somebody who is not rehearsed. So there is the evolutionary value to catastrophic thinking, but that becomes a dysfunctionality when it operates in the metro environment, in the city environment. But what we have is the cowardly fathers, the fathers with catastrophic thinking, and that gets internalized. So children automatically develop that catastrophic thinking. They don't know where it has come from. It is no longer in their circumstances. It is coming from the circumstances of their fathers and their ancestors. It's an intergenerational passing on of catastrophic thinking. So that is one very big thing, that people with this, they can't get into courage, they can't get into leadership, they can't get into enterprise, they can't take a stand in the organizations, they always compromise and live, they always submit and live, and they pay a heavy cost in letting go of things out of their field. They don't even encash their rights given by the constitution or by the organization. So they fear even of asserting one's rights. And this calls for a lot of courage and a lot of self-work, because catastrophic thinking is not easy to get over. In terms of pathology, this leads to too much of anxiety. So we see in generalized anxiety disorder, in panic, in paranoid personality disorder, in avoidant personality disorder, in certain forms of psychosis where there is a delusion of persecution. In all these areas, in some forms of obsessive compulsions, in all these areas, the anxiety is very high. And one of the reasons for that is having internalized a father without courage, a father with catastrophic thinking, and having internalized the catastrophic thinking oneself. Another way of looking at it is not to have trust in oneself or trust in God. But scientifically speaking, it is the father without courage who is not a good enough father and does not therefore evoke the courage part of our masculinity, the fortitude part of our masculinity, the robustness and um, the flexi not the 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 strength and the power part of our masculinity. So all this
Endurance.
endurance part of it. So all
Very rightly put. I just had a session with someone where the father has been like emotionally distant and not so courageous due to his own fears and own traumas and bonds. Now, this young man has a child and he's all the time concerned about his child's health, unnecessarily hypochondriac towards child's health, and doesn't believe in any God. So, the guilt of not declaring the father dead, there's no internalization, and you have killed the father there. And now there's guilt that it is going to, that the father is going to put rage on your child self. The child is no more the child. So sometimes what you're saying, sir, this plays out in a very distant way also. It may not be contained to one individual that I am having it. It can right now where exactly the father abandoned the child. Now his son is in that age and there is this constant fear that something will happen to my son, which is actually his own fear of that time. So it's how vividly it plays out sometimes indirectly.
3 points come up. One is um, from where the father has been absent.
Same age where the fear has activated for the son. It's
So
it's
one
very much present there.
is intergenerational, that at age where your father became absent, the same age you become absent for your son.
No, you have become over concerned for your son that something will happen to him because you are revisiting your childhood, and now this time the father you're
Correct.
compensating for the father, but you are coming up in a session for generalized anxiety and negative thinking.
So it's the identification with the son and
Son.
fear of the trauma re-happening.
And since there was no internalized father, strong father, so you are in that catastrophic thinking that, oh, I cannot do much, something will happen. And there is no God also
Correct.
in the system.
So just two more things, and then we can close for the day and continue this discussion for the second part of it. Uh, One is many fathers become absent after the child's birth because then the wife has become the mother and the Oedipal guilt starts. And many people have sexual problems after the birth of the child because of the unresolved Oedipus. The second part is if you have a father without courage, without robustness, then you don't grow out to be a robust individual who can support and secure a family. You yourself are looking for security. How are you to provide security to somebody?
To somebody.
And the third part has to relate to the how you see the father in the social situation. If you have seen him going down to everybody, but nobody going down to him, it's very different. You also develop that. You don't develop that confidence and that natural leadership quality to
To
practice
stand for themselves.
domination where necessary. Say, for example, you have two IPS officers.
Hmm.
One IPS officer is the son of a IAS officer, and the second has just risen from the ordinary family. Now,
Hmm.
the person who has grown up looking at his father as an IAS officer, everybody is going down to him. He is very comfortable dealing with secretaries and all the senior IAS officers because right from childhood, he has called them uncle and he has been with them in a personal basis,
It's a known territory.
own territory. But somebody who has grown right from the bottom, he is literally shivering in his boots if he has to go and meet a high ranking IAS officer. So the kind of fear of authority figure that he has is very different. It has all to do with the kind of father and the kind of social place of himself he has internalized in his mind. So it's very important that the father show some courage and not have catastrophic thinking for the child to be healthy. Should we close for the day and continue second part?
And I think we'll be getting a lot of questions from the viewers till we go for the second part of this amazing conversation, sir. So we'll be collecting the bank of questions from the viewers, and we would like to have a discussion over those questions with you.
Sure enough.
Thank you so much. Till we continue with the part two. Namaste.